This is the Slots and Sockets Podcast, episode number 4. And we are recording this live to video, not quite tape, on August 12th, 2024. And AMD has launched the 9700X and 9600X with a vulnerability. But did they botch the launch? Intel's got new BIOS updates. NVIDIA's got new leaks on a 4090D and some new gaming bundles. And Parker, What do we got for tonight's show?
Well, a couple of things. First and foremost, I kind of wanted to throw this out there. For those who don't keep up, there was a new NVIDIA graphics driver released on August 6th.
Oh,
so
very nice.
In case you don't have the newest, latest, and greatest drivers, go get them. Intel had one on July 30th, which is like 3 people in the world who use them. And AMD still hasn't done anything since middle of July. So, okay, so let's start with AMD.
Yeah, first.
Okay, we have 9700X and 9600X. I think the how you phrase and market these processors is important. I think AMD did a bad job at releasing these by themselves and the first round of releases for these because people need to realize that these are not X3D parts. So you've got that, and they are the low end of the 9000 series. So anyone who thinks that this is going to be a gaming machine, or gaming just powerhouse, I think you maybe need to kind of get those expectations in reality.
Yeah, temper your expectations for sure.
They're all comparing this in games to 7800X 3D. Now, I understand that comparing to the 7700X and the 7600X, I think AMD kind of did these two processors are a little wrong. 9700X should have been a higher watted processor. If you look at the benchmarks when people overclock this, that is actually a really good processor when you say I don't care about efficiency, because when you overclock it gets good.
It scoots. Yeah, it's pretty beefy.
It is, but I think that we got to keep in mind, this is sort of in the low end of the socket. So I don't know what people were really expecting. They hit their numbers with the efficiency, so the IPC gains are there, and it uses a crap ton power, and it uses less power. If you like, and I think what it would have been nice for AMD to say, you could have had like the 9700X, and maybe a 9700, and maybe made a difference in pricing there.
Yep.
And one was a efficiency focused processor, and one was a speed processor. I think we don't quite get it because I don't know where we're going to see a 9800X 3D slot in. I don't know where we're going to see the other two processors slot in. The honest truth is I hope people don't think the 9950X and 9900X, those are not going to be amazing gaming processors. I think they're going to be better than these. But I don't think you're going to sit there and be like, oh my gosh, it's not going to beat the 7800X 3D. It's not.
No. Well, and in a lot of cases on some of the benchmarks, it doesn't even beat the 7700X. Just because the 7700X is, if I recall correctly, an 80 watt part.
Mm-hmm.
And they're making this efficiency play that makes no sense. If the 9700X outperformed even by a couple of percentage points, outperformed the 7700X, I could see the efficiency play, but it seems like they were swinging for a goal that really didn't have a market segment.
I think really what we're going to see is the 9600X, 9700X get better with some BIOS updates. I
Probably.
think we were also seeing if you pushed the RAM in these processors, um, then these processors really liked that. So
Yep.
I think what we're going to find out is that if you had cheap RAM with the 7700X and now you're just going to do a switch swap, you may want to go out and spend some money on a higher um, binned RAM set,
Yeah.
because I think that we're going to see some better performance with RAM in the 9000 series. Um, and the one thing I would say is, um, you know, these are low, but I think the 9600X too. But when you open PBO and you really put some power into these processors get way better.
Right.
So,
Well,
um,
and part of the bad marketing play seems to be the huge variance we're seeing between reviewers. Now, one thing I really appreciate about Gamers Nexus and people like Hardware Unboxed is they try to cover pretty much everybody. The people who will have a friend slap together a machine and just go with it, or the people who, slap together their own machine and just go with it without doing any tweaking or tuning. And interestingly, in Gamers Nexus coverage, they had a lot of problems with that CPU, with the 9700. And if I recall correctly, Steve said that they could not get a stable configuration that would boot on that part. So
I don't know. I'm not sure if it's BIOS where the issues were, and I don't know. Um, uh, it's interesting. They said that, and it sort of just kind of stopped. And I mean, yeah. Look, I
yeah,
get the 9700X and 9600X didn't dethrone the 13th and 14th gen, the 14th gen processors, but it wasn't really the market for that to be the competition there. So, um, yeah, I don't really see a huge issue with any of that. Um, you know, I
I mean, they're
I
not. They
don't
don't
know.
look like bad parts to me. It just looks like it was marketed badly. Because, I mean, I'm amazed that somebody like Gamers Nexus got sent basically a bad setup by AMD. And that's the thing, is that's AMD's failing. Why didn't they validate the system they sent out?
But I think the other half of this, I think, like because I think it was some of the people who had these said it really is into the BIOS and how some of the like the F clocks, all of it, because AMD does have some different clocks that you have to play around with,
Yep.
and out of the box, it seems like some of the motherboard manufacturers, like MSI, maybe had a better solution in the BIOS on
Mm-hmm.
how to get this working than others. Um, I do think we'll see some improvements um, with the AM5 platform, especially the 9000. I mean, the other thing we got to keep in mind, it's a new launch, so
Yeah.
what people,
Well,
it's not
you
going to be
have issues
perfect.
every launch. Yeah.
Hey, guess what? It's not frying itself to death like others. So I'm just, you
Very
know,
true. Very true. Now, right before, or I should say, right after this launch, actually breaking today as we record this, uh, we have interesting information about vulnerabilities from sync close going back to all AMD processors from 2006 on. And AMD has stated that they have no plans of updating older generation parts. So if you're not on a Ryzen 5000 series or newer, you're going to be vulnerable to it. The big question is it that big of a deal? A lot of vulnerabilities like this in the past were vulnerabilities that required physical access. And some of the people I've seen talk about it say it's more of a vulnerability for your motherboard manufacturer, or someone that has physical access to your system that could potentially exploit it, but it's pretty bad because it effectively looks like this vulnerability is pulling a Lenovo and loading malware into your EFI that you can't get rid of without some specialized tools that I didn't even know existed until I worked at Intel.
Um, on the older gen stuff, I mean, you look at something like this, and I think the people who are more concerned about this is going to be corporate.
Yeah.
And I don't know if a corporation is going to have a deployed 3700X, 2600X.
I
I
mean,
mean,
they might on some older workstations, but by this point, they're probably on the verge of getting cycled out.
from an IT perspective, the goal is you have a lifespan that your IT team kind of plans for,
Yeah.
how long they keep certain things. So desktops have a lifespan, laptops have a lifespan, and any good
Servers.
IT team is going to have a schedule where they're not doing everybody at once, but they cycle people in and out of new hardware throughout the year, and they plan for failures. Um, and so I look at this and I say, okay, yeah, it is. The corporates are going to be obviously um, more involved with something like this, which is why you see the 5000 series and higher getting the updates.
Right. Well,
Um,
that also applies to Epic as well, because Epic from that same generation is the endpoint. So yeah,
servers are even shorter lifespans than desktops. I mean, you know what I
it
mean?
depends. I mean, it really depends on the environment. A lot of companies will keep servers for 5 to 10 years until they run out of.
Now, is this a exploit where you have to physically be there?
That's the interesting thing. Some of the people I've heard talk about it say it is, but there is some question that malware could potentially exploit it if it gets onto your system.
I mean,
So the risk is there until
yeah.
so
I mean,
if you're running Ryzen 3000 or older, be careful. Just be careful on the internet.
or lock your doors.
Yeah,
I mean,
basically. Lock your doors and
that's
be
it. If
careful.
it's an in person thing, it's like, okay, well, that's easy to fix.
Yeah, it's not a
Um,
big deal. But yeah, it's
I don't know.
which
I mean, I
you know
don't think it's a huge issue for some of the older stuff, but I mean, for users, I just don't see a ton of users getting really crazy about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I
and
don't think it's going to impact the general populace quite as bad as it will business.
and what we're
I have
talking
a
about,
feeling it's going to be like Spectre or some of the other previous vulnerabilities.
yeah. And while we're talking AMD, I just figured we would jump down here real quick and talk that if you are super into Warhammer Space Marine 2 or Unknown 9: The Awakening, all three of you, then you can go buy a new a Ryzen CPU and GPU, and you can get that or select laptops. Um, it's yeah. These are the AMD kind of focused games. Um, it's a bundle. Yeah, you can get it. Do
I
not buy the bundles for the games.
Yeah, don't
No.
buy the part for the bundle.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
just kind of get the bundle as it comes cuz right now the bundle is only for the Ryzen 7000 CPUs for mobile and desktop and Ryzen 7000 GPUs on mobile and desktop, and it's only certain
Well, and the
SKUs in
Ryzen
that.
9 desktop. So if you are gonna
Well, yeah, but that's in the 7000 series.
7000 series, that's true.
Yeah,
If
yeah.
you're gonna get an old one.
So last
Um,
generation's Ryzen.
yeah.
So yeah.
And seeing we're talking about games, let's kind of jump over to GPU news,
Sure.
because we'll kind of come back to the dumpster fire a little bit later. Okay, so Battle Mage. Okay, so with all the bad stuff happening at Intel, people getting fired, and I think we've already got some programs that are canned or canceled, and none of that really surprises me, especially because Intel is trying very hard to be profitable. That we're going to see some delays, and so we're starting to hear the Battle Mage is not going to come as early as maybe we thought. This is a problem actually because the the issue that Intel graphics has run into is a day late and a dollar short.
Yep.
And they keep on having to sell these graphics cards cheaper than they'd like because they're missing performance targets or they have driver problems. Well, now they've got driver problems fixed, hopefully, but now they're going to continue to miss targets. And I think we could easily see Intel graphics be canned with the economy at Intel. I'm sure Scott Peterson wouldn't like to hear that, but
Yeah.
The honest truth is that I think at this point Intel has so many problems, and it's going to get worse because if you look at what the shareholders are talking about, it's really interesting from a financial. They're trying to figure out why the 10 nanometer fabs are empty.
Right.
There's bigger problems from a market perspective that they haven't picked up on yet. So, I don't know. I think that I would not want to be anywhere at Intel as an employee because I think it's just bad news with no happy music.
Yeah, I mean the people that are there are working, like running around like chickens with their heads cut off, and they don't know anything that's going on. A lot of the reporting around Intel in general, not to jump topics here, but a lot of the reporting I've seen has been that Intel employees are reaching out to the media to find out what's going on in the company, and that doesn't bode well for a product that's, still very much in its infancy. And, you know, Intel's always been kind of when it comes to dedicated graphics anyway. I mean, they canned Larrabee and they're like, we'll just turn it into Xeon Phi. Okay.
I think the issue from a graphics card perspective is, well, some people are going to be highly sought after in the graphics card side. The majority of people on the Intel graphics are not going to be sought after. And maybe they need to retool and go somewhere else within Intel or somewhere else, like on the processor side. But I think this could be the start of bad for Intel graphics. And not that there's a huge following of them anyways, because, I just, they haven't sold. And they can't get board partners, really strong in that. And I just think,
oh, come on, they've got ASRock.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but that's the thing is, like,
they couldn't convince EVGA. Now I say, had Intel just given EVGA a crap ton of money and said, please, pretty please make our video cards, I think there would have been some more talk about that, because I think people love EVGA so much that they would have been like, okay, maybe it doesn't suck that bad.
I wonder if Intel did do that, and that's part of the reason why EVGA pulled out, because if you remember back when XFX was doing both NVIDIA and AMD, back even before it was AMD, back when it was ATI, NVIDIA started strong-arming XFX, and XFX is just like, see ya! And they went to ATI AMD. And I
how'd that work out for them?
Well, not bad, because they're outlasting EVGA. And that's the problem, I think, is EVGA didn't want to pivot. They just wanted to get out of it and just become what Antec became as an accessories company. And
I mean,
maybe come back
it'll be like BFG. Give it a little bit more time. I mean, what do they make right now? Power supplies? I mean, that's all EVGA makes right now.
Power supplies? Right? They don't even make. I don't think they even make power supplies anymore. Because
I think they do. I think they're still making them. But again, power supplies are easy. You slap your name on it, somebody else makes it.
Yeah.
Right. You're not making it. And to be from a design perspective, it's like, okay, what can you give us now this time? What looks cool? I think That's the problem is with EVGA, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
Last thing for GPU news. So apparently, NVIDIA hates everybody but China, and if you want tons of VRAM, you should just go to China and buy Chinese products because you can get a 4090 with 48 gigs of RAM. 4080 Super for 32. What the heck? Like they're so anti. This is how they screw everybody.
Yep.
And yet, if you go to China and you're going to run a server farm, you can grab one of these and have so much system memory that VRAM, you would never use it. And I don't know. I think the loaded question is do we think we'll see some of these cards in the wild, maybe reviewed here in the States? And I'd be interested to see how expensive they are.
Well, I mean, yeah, I think somebody like Gamers Nexus might pick one up, kind of like they did with the Yeston Cute Pet series of cards and various parts, just because it's a novelty thing. But my concern is, how are they getting around the Chips Act? Because from my understanding, sending your top parts to China is illegal in the US.
It's the 4090D, by the way.
Right, it's a different part, but it's still a 4090.
It is a
It's still in
4090,
that
but
performance line.
the D was redesigned to meet the requirements for the CHIPS Act, from what I understand. I don't know. I don't know. That's all I'm gonna
Yeah.
say. I don't care about Chinese and parts. I just want more RAM. So NVIDIA, if you're listening, stop being a bunch of turds, buttholes.
Right.
Give me a 4090 with 96 gigs of RAM, and everyone will think you're amazing. Otherwise, until then, I think we're just left with thinking that AMD only loves us because they only give us a decent amount of VRAM.
And they only
All
give
right.
us features that are available on competitors' products.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
So, yeah.
By the way, this was not on the show notes, so I'm going to pull a little bit of
Calling an audible. Okay.
an audible here.
That's allowed.
GPU. Did we talk about AMD Fluid Motion Frame Gen?
We did, I think, last week. Yeah, we discussed
Okay.
it. I haven't gotten to play with it yet, unfortunately.
Okay, so far, and I've been playing with it. It's so good because it's a driver based. Now, I would be interested to try this because I don't have a 7000. I have the 6950 XT, so I can use it and it works fine. But I would be very interested to try this in a 7000 series because I'm hearing that the 7000 series is even a little bit better than what I'm getting. But I think this is I believe that this driver piece is going to play a bigger role with AMD in the long term. I do not think this is going to be a make or break it technology for the 7000 series. I think it's a good thing to have. I think the next series that we get with ray tracing performance increases that we're expecting to see on that in the budget, I think that is going to be huge. Because if you're not ray tracing and you can use that for pure like rasterization bumps, I think that is going to be even better. So I'm very interested to see what that technology does. And please bring more stuff like that, because the fact is that more driver level stuff where I turn it on in a driver and it bypasses the need to have software built and cooked into a game is huge.
Yep.
Just don't ban me or get me banned from my CSGO tournaments.
Right? Like,
wink, wink.
That's yikes.
Yeah.
That was a very interesting thing with fluid motion frames too. But yeah, I mean, I can't disagree a single bit with your take there. It sounds like it's going to be very interesting for the 8000 series, because I wouldn't be one bit surprised if they might have some extra little bit of hardware baked into the silicon somewhere that kind of accelerates that fluid motion frame
Oh,
jamming
I think so.
and
I think
makes it
if you're
better.
not using, well, and we know that um, the rumors that we're getting are ray tracing performance bumps out of the next gen.
Yeah.
Like we're hearing some fairly strong, consistent pieces that we're going to continue to see increases in this on the ray tracing side, and then that to expect ray tracing bumps more than rasterization bumps, which I'm mixed on that. I think ray tracing, although apparently becoming the next thing since sliced bread, I think it's a gimmick, but it's lasting longer than physics, so I guess I really can't complain.
I think ray tracing is going to wind up being a lot like DX11 or physics or anything like that, where it just eventually it just becomes a thing that's normal. Nobody even pays any attention to it because everything does it.
Yep.
Mainly for movie production and for rendering in videos is where it's really kind of blown up, because that's ray tracing is literally how you do CGI in movies, and being able to accelerate it simplifies that workflow big time. And
It
AI
can make it
now
go quicker.
is kind of baking in and improving that too. But
It'll be interesting
you
to
know,
see. Are we at an AI bubble? Do you think, Scott? Is the
that's
bubble going to pop?
whether we're in a bubble or not, I think is the same question we were asking in 2021 with crypto. Are we in a bubble? Well, yeah, we were. Um, but we didn't know for sure. And I think with AI, yeah, we probably are in a bubble. Because it's really flash in the pan right now, just like ray tracing is, and it's the hot new thing, and everybody's throwing AI in everything.
Hmm.
And
I want an AI toaster. Someone give me an AI toaster.
yeah,
I want a toaster
one
that
that
I plug has two plugs, one for my AI processor and one for my toaster. And I
and you
think
just
that
heat the toast with the AI processor.
ex- I mean, like the problem with AI is that everything now has AI on it,
Yeah,
and I think what people are like, and it's not AI. It's absolutely not.
yeah.
It's dumb. It's like how everything used to be like smart. You know, I had smart things, and now you had a smart smart timers, and all this stuff, and now it's like AI timers, and it's AI processors, and it's like, like I love how like they're trying to do this Copilot thing. Okay, what
Nobody
is it
wants
gonna do?
that.
Nobody wants it. Like nobody's sitting there saying, if I want AI, I will go to the internet and pay somebody to do AI for me.
Yep.
They're not going to do it on their local machine. Um, this is, anyways.
Yeah,
Let's go to the dumpster fire.
well, before we get
Okay,
there, one more thing. We will know the bubble is about to pop when Japan starts releasing AI powered bum washing toilet seats.
I didn't. I figured that they were already had those.
No. They're smart toilet seats still. They haven't baked AI in
Okay,
yet.
so I have things to say about that, but I am going to refrain from saying things, and we'll move on.
Yeah, let's avoid getting demonetized. So
Yeah,
Intel has rolled out their new BIOS. Was that the 0129? And
OX129.
it's interesting what they've done, because we haven't seen any performance drop, but the voltage has decreased sometimes.
So I am not convinced that this micro patch is the solution. And I think the problem that we're going to have is your people are going to put this in, and then they're going to say, "Oh, well, that processor died because it had prior damage."
Mm-hmm.
And the only way to know that we have problems is to sit there and be like, "Okay, new processor, never been turned on before, on a board that has the right microcode," and that starts dying. Um, what's really interesting is if you start looking at VDD CPU, the voltage demand from the CPU.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if you go into the BIOS for these motherboards, the VDD once it hits 1.3 is supposed to be red,
Yep.
and it's supposed to be the motherboard saying danger. Okay, um, it's too high. Now, if you look at the voltages outside after the 129 microcode, you will see VDDs higher than 1.3. And I think what's going on here is there I think Intel is trying to pull a fast one. I think what they're doing is they're saying we need this to go away. With these parts that are bad are already bad. We know it. Um, and we can pass it off and we're going to buy ourselves some time. And eventually people aren't going to RMA because our RMA process is going to be so bad, they'll just go buy a new processor.
Yep. Or they bought
Um,
from Dell or whomever, and they're just kind of getting the shaft at that point.
because if you look at this now, what's interesting, there's some people who've done some more digging, and the notion is if you set the voltage max in the original BIOS, okay, so this goes the prior this microcode that's magically going to fix it. People are saying that if you set the VDD max at 1.3 and you downclock your RAM, that those problems, those machines don't have issues.
Hmm.
And Puget Sound is saying, "Hey, we don't have all these issues," and I think maybe it's because they're maybe trying to be a little less aggressive on everything. So, I my personal thought is what we're seeing here is they needed the voltage above 1.3 stably to get the over 5 gigahertz because they were pushing the speeds.
Yeah.
They had to have it over the 1.3 volts. I think that what they didn't realize is that when they did that, they were going to do irreparable damage and it was going to cook it. I think that with the high RAM is where we're seeing these fails. I do not expect this microcode to fix. I think we're going to start seeing here in about 3 or 4 months these processors with new processors fail, and it's going to be round 2. And I don't know what Intel's going to do, because if that starts being the case and it gets to some of the YouTubers and some of these people who are doing some more journalistic approach to this problem, it's going to get worse. And I will say this, with lawsuits, they're going to find out. All they have to do is start subpoena documents, and internally there's got to be an engineer who's like, hey, so if we do this, like, it's going to buy us some time, but this is still going to fail. This is bad.
Yeah.
And you're going to find that email and you'll be like, and it's going to be, it's going to be bad. And if there is somebody like that who has said that, and the other half of it is you're about to lay off 12, 15, 18,000 people, they better be careful with who they lay off, because whoever has those emails will be like, hey, come take a look at this. I've been telling them for years that this was going to be a problem. And yeah, it's we'll see. Time will tell.
Yep. It's a bad situation all around.
I think the loaded question is, I do think that this BIOS is probably a step in the right direction. All I would say is that depending on your motherboard's, what's the word I want to say, your comfort level with the technology, the technical prowess of your motherboard, would be if I'm going to go to a beta BIOS or if I'm not.
Yeah, and that's That's the thing is none of the manufacturers have officially released BIOSes. Last I checked, Asus is still only providing the beta versions on their website. I think MSI and Gigabyte have started putting them on the product pages, on the download pages for the products, but they're still labeled as beta BIOSes. So, it's still kind of one of those use at your own risk things, but also you're kind of rolling the dice pretty big time if you're not already lowering the voltage on your CPU and you're on the older BIOS.
Y-
So if you don't want to upgrade, take the page out of Falcon Northwest's book
Just
and
turn off your
drop your
computer; it won't
voltages.
damage.
Well, yeah,
Just
that's
yeah,
also
don't
the
just turn
best
it
way to
off.
secure it too. You
That's the
can't.
best way.
You won't
No
get sync
malware.
flows if you turn it off.
Yeah, no malware, no viruses.
Yeah,
The honest truth is that might be the only way to fix this is to do that. Now, I do think, and I have not seen. In fact, I've got to look here because I'm interested to see, like, do we have like 14th gen processors like showing up on marketplace that are like cheap?
that's a good question. I haven't looked for that.
I mean, let's see. Let me go to marketplace and let's look up i9. Let's see here. Let's see. No.
Interesting.
There's the 12700. Um, no, there is not a ton. Now here's a
So
Legion i9
you're seeing
with a
12th gen.
3080. Yeah, I do see a 12th gen. Here's a 12900K for 300 in my neck of the woods. Yeah, I don't see a ton of stuff, and that's what's interesting. Is I thought maybe we would start seeing some of the stuff kind of roll um, into this, but even then, like some of these older machines, like the Legion, I would say that's a 10900K. Um, I think not yet, but it'll be interesting to see what the used market and what buyers feel comfortable. Or the loaded question is are the users who are buying used, like sure, we'll be fine. Like I'm just going to roll the dice on this. Here's a
Yeah.
13900K sealed for 390. How much is a 13900K? If I buy it on Amazon,
Well, if you
it
bought
is
a sealed part,
458. Yeah, so this is sealed on Facebook. So
yeah.
458 for that's a 13900K. So for 458, this is selling for 390. So I don't know. It'll be interesting. Oh, this is interesting. So listen to me. This is I had sent in my old 13900K for RMA, and they sent me a brand new one. It took them a month to process the RMA, so I bought a 14900K.
Huh.
How long
Okay.
until that 14900K is dead?
Right. Well, and that's the other thing too is if you have a board that supports BIOS flashback, which a lot of the boards do now, and you haven't run your 14900 or your 13th gen, uh, run the flashback and update the BIOS without the CPU in it, so you don't cook the CPU when you flash the BIOS.
Mhm.
I would not recommend booting new CPUs without having the BIOS already on it. And if I recall correctly, pretty much all of the mid to high end boards on Intel now have flashback, and I'm seeing pretty much the same thing on AMD. So it's generally not hard. Usually, you just stick a thumb drive into a specific port on the back of your board, hit a button with it getting power from the wall, and you should automatically flash it and hopefully save yourself a headache if you still did build an Intel after all this crazy news has come out. The big question is how are OEMs going to honor the warranty though? Because
Okay, so
some of them look
I
like
have
you're going to
something to
get
say about
hosed.
this. Okay, so I was So this is Verge. Verge started reaching out and asking OEMs, say, "Hey, what are you going to do?" Um, I would tell people to look at this list and choose if you're going to buy a desktop or a laptop from, to understand how they're going to support or not support you. So Asus would not promise warranty extension.
Oh, no, that was Acer.
Sorry, Acer.
Acer.
So Acer is giving you the middle finger. Asus is going to give you 2 more years. Dell and Alienware 2 more years, 5 years total. Now, a lot of these companies said one thing and then changed it.
Right.
Just like Intel has changed everything that what they're saying. But as the end, Dell and Alienware said 5 total years. Okay. HP said 2 more years. So Lenovo is going to give you the shaft, no warranty extension. MSI gives you 2 more years. Corsair gives you 4 years total, which is interesting. It's 3 years on the base. Well, is it 2 years or 3 years on the base? And then they gave 1 more, and then they got 2 more. So it should have, with everything on a retail box, should be 5 years, right?
Well, that's the thing, is it depends on what their warranty was for their Origin PCs, because I think it's Origin that they own, and I believe they gave 2-year warranties, so extending it to a 4-year total is actually pretty good. So,
but a box, a retail box. If I bought a retail box from Amazon and it toasted, I should have direct from Intel 3 years plus another 2. So,
well,
if
that's
you're
assuming
a box,
you get an agent at Intel that is willing to recognize it as a box CPU.
That's true. So Corsair 4 years, Digital Storm 5 years, Falcon Northwest 5 years, Main Gear 5 years, Origin PC 4 years, NZXT, no promise that they're going to do it, which is surprising.
Not to me.
Puget Sounds 3 years, which is a little surprising, and Velocity Micro, which I didn't realize. Anyways, you get 5 years on the CPU.
Yeah.
Cyber Power is 5 years, and iBuyPower is 5 years.
So it sounds like the majority of the mid-range kind of gamer and office folks are stepping up and saying, yeah, we're going to take care of the consumers.
NZXT, seriously. No promise.
Are you really surprised, considering what they pulled with their exploding PCI Express extension?
I'm just saying.
I mean, they blocked me on Twitter because they didn't like stuff that I said about their burning.
How many people have blocked you on
cables.
Twitter, Bruce?
Not many.
Is that
but
a normal
NZXT
thing?
proved me right by blocking me on Twitter. So,
thanks, Lenovo.
Guys.
By the way, I'm not a Lenovo fan. No. I hate that they whitelist stuff. I really hate that they whitelist stuff.
They also fuse their AMD CPUs, so if you put it in a non-Lenovo board, it won't work.
So Lenovo, and then the other one was Acer. I don't think anyone's surprised with Acer. I'm surprised that Acer actually has a desktop with the 14900K. I just figured that was above their pay grade for how much thermal they could get out of a cardboard box. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, all I would say is to look at this list of what's going on. And if you are somebody who is purchasing or looking to purchase any amount of desktops, laptops, look at this list as how badly are we going to support or not support you? And I think that is very, very interesting for us to understand, and I think, look at, like you sit there and say, Dell and Alienware have a 5-year total. Okay, that's after some back and forth and them saying, well, no, we're going to wait for this to kind of see. And then, okay, we realized that Intel told us these were bad. And then, okay, yeah, we're going to do 5 years. Like, it wasn't a straight, yes, here's 5 years. Some people were like 5 years, like Digital Storm, 5 years. Falcon Northwest, 5 years. Main Gear, 5 years. So, just know and look at this, and I think anyone who does a 4 or 5 year is in pretty good shape. I will say this: the one thing that's really interesting in this list I pulled out is Main gear. And this is in the original release and the response to The Verge. In the coming weeks, Main Gear will be alerting customers of the processor warranty expensive and proactively guide effective customers through the necessary update procedures. Now, I think everyone's doing that,
Yep.
but the notion is that these OEMs know what processor you have. They know what motherboard you have. They know if you've been screwed. And I think the loaded question is going to be, it's going to be a delicate balance between not pissing off Intel and supporting customers.
Yeah. Well, and to that point, Lenovo was given the worst response award because they said Lenovo has been made aware of the instability issue affecting Intel 13 to 14 generation and is working with Intel to understand the potential impact on our products and how best to resolve them. Bro, I could tell you that in 5 minutes. You replace the stupid CPU. We will work toward integrating into our future product BIOS any fixes provided by Intel once available. So basically, if you own a Lenovo, good luck with that, bud. We recommend certain customers impacted by any CPU instability issues to contact Lenovo service for support. And
that's got to be a
what they
marketing
didn't
response.
say, that is absolutely a marketing response. And it's
What
a
I don't
bad
understand,
marketing response.
it's a bad one. It is. I think it opens up to be like, okay, so obviously no Lenovo guy from PR didn't know what he was saying.
Yeah.
I think because the notion is that I would expect Lenovo to have BIOS updates. I think so. Well, actually, this is a good question. Okay, I think the follow up piece will be to look at these desktops from HP and be like, okay, so we have third party through like MSI and Asus, and these motherboard manufacturers have BIOSes. How long will it take HP to get a BIOS out? I mean, you can't say Digital Storm, right? Digital Storm uses those, and it's based off what motherboard who the manufacturer. Same with Falcon
They buy
Northwest.
off the shelf
I would
boards.
assume, yeah, I think Main Gear does the same, and I would think that Origin is the same.
Yep.
NZXT probably has a little bit more leeway because I think they might be using NZXT boards, but I think they're using a third party to do those. So then it goes back to the true OEMs where they're building and they're making their own, right? So
yeah, they're the ones that are going to have to engineer a custom BIOS. And
MSI, Lenovo, HP, Dell, Alienware, and possibly Acer. I don't know. I mean, Acer might have 7 machines that have these processors.
I didn't know Acer made anything beyond monitors and CD-ROM drives. So,
apparently they make ups. I mean, I don't know.
Okay.
I'm not into the boxed, pay us to build a machine that you could build for less than yourself.
Yeah, I mean, they have a purpose, but I build your own. It's a lot easier than people make it sound to be.
I guess if you want to play CS:GO and want to make like 30 FPS, then Acer's a great point to go to.
Right, and have power supply that's 200 watts underpowered. So for our last
it
topic,
won't fry it if it's underpowered on the. Actually, that's a good question.
Your CPU is your power supply is the fuse.
It is, right?
Oh shit!
I just thought about that. I'm like, the solution here, Intel, we give you your solution. Tell everybody to use a power supply that won't power the machine up. Oh my gosh.
There you go.
Oh my gosh.
So for our last topic of the night, and I made a bit of a Freudian slip when I typed this one out. Arrow late to consume 100 watts less than 14th gen. I decided to leave that in because I figured it would make you smile, which it did. So goal achieved. And, it's very interesting that they're speccing out Arrow Lake to be 100 watts more efficient based on what the article says. It's going to be the same performance.
It
What are
has
they
to
doing
be.
with 14th gen if they could do that with Arrow Lake? What did they
Well,
find?
they
What
could. No,
improvements
no,
did they fix?
they couldn't. They couldn't do the 14th gen with 100 power watts less. Um, their fab facility failed miserably. I don't think that. I think the 100 watt less is going to be a hope and a prayer.
Mm.
This is going to be 60 watts less. I
You think it's
think
going to be that close? Okay, fair enough.
oh, I think it's going to be a lot closer. I think that we got to keep in mind that you're still going back to Intel fab facilities to build these things.
Yeah.
They're still not going to go TSMC. We know that Intel's fab facilities are not up to snuff with the other Samsung and TSMCs.
Well, yeah, they're
Um,
struggling hard with anything less than 10 nanometer. They're
and
even struggling with 10
that's
nanometer. Look at the 13th and 14th gen.
I mean, that's it. That is 100% it. So, I think that they have to, because if they miss, like, the truth of the matter is that if Arrow Lake doesn't give them the efficiency bump, then it's going to have a direct effect on the following generation, because look, this is if you look at, and AMD does this with graphics cards, Nvidia does this, AMD does this, AMD is in the middle of this. What is the 7700X? It's the efficiency rework.
Yep.
It's the IPC's higher, but it's using it's using 25 less watts, and we're all complaining. But you have to understand that the efficiency there has to come in for you to come in the next generation and put in a crap ton of power. So it is a back and forth with this. So Arrow Lake has to be it has to use less power. It absolutely has to, because eventually you come to a point where nobody's going to want a 600-watt desktop processor. See, I think that there's a limit for.
I do. Give me all
Oh
the
yeah,
watts.
what was it? Was it Bulldozer?
Oh, geez. Yeah.
The FX
Yeah.
Bulldozer?
Good grief.
And it was like, yeah. And then you realize when you turn these things on that they were using more power than your graphics cards.
Mm-hmm.
And like it would heat your room like a space heater.
What was the
I mean, I knew people who.
the Prescott Pentium 4s were like that too.
So you've got to balance it, because the problem is if you do performance, eventually your thermal goes so high that no one wants to buy it, because and you have to have a motherboard that'll do, if you went the other way around, I mean, they're already using 288 watts to the CPU, which is insane. If you added more, 388, I mean, I just think that it has to be. I question what that number will be. I really think 60 is being very generous. I think they're going to run into some issues, because think about this with Arrow Lake. I'm guessing that there are some very smart people who are going and looking at the design of Arrow Lake right now, very, very much so, and be like, what's our voltage on the ring bus?
How's that VDD doing?
And I will promise you that there will be at least more QA time in the lab with Arrow Lake, because they know that if they miss that, it's just gonna be it. I look, the honest truth is, I really question. I really, really start to question if AMD can pull this out.
You mean Intel can pull it out?
Intel, yeah.
Yeah. I was gonna say, because AMD's doing pretty good. They had their stumble, but yeah, I mean, the thing that really gets me is that the issue seems to be stemming from the ring bus itself. Intel has been using a ring bus on their CPUs, as far as I'm aware, since Haswell. It could have been before, but I wasn't really in depth involved in those parts prior to that, outside of being a user of them. But they know how this stuff needs to work. And the fact that they let the voltage on the ring bus get away from them is really showing that they're not paying attention. Now, one of the things I have heard about Arrow Lake is that with the new socket, they're decoupling the voltage on the ring bus from the voltage on the CPU. So no more are you going to run into a situation where VCore gets a big shot in the butt and your ring bus just goes, I'm
Okay,
too
so
hot.
so instead of cooking the ring bus, they're going to cook the processor now next time.
Well, I mean, the processor's kind of always been the one that gets cooked anyway, because I mean, look at who does the overclocking and all the craziness. I mean, you turn on the Asus Extreme profile on your Z whatever 90 board it is, and that's going to bump your VCore and VDD and all that through the roof anyway. I mean, you look at any video where Jace 2 Cents or Gamers Nexus talks about auto OC, and the boards just throw a freaking brick at your part and try just to keep it stable, because that's what they know works on the majority of parts. And so the good thing is that if they do that with Arrow Lake, it's potentially not going to cook the ring bus, but you're still going to go potentially reduce your lifespan of your part. Do you care so much? Because if they do it right, you're gonna take a CPU that would run for 10 years and make it run 5 before it burns out. Any way you slice it, you're gonna be replacing the system before that anyway, especially if you're a gamer.
I get the people are upset about this, and I get that there's and every which way they should be upset. Intel screwed it.
Yeah.
They did it bad. And the only thing that I keep on coming back to is the piss poor response, and having to go back 4 or 5 times and realize, yeah, our position really still looks bad, and
Right.
having to go back and forth, and it's like, you know, I think you sit there and say, okay, you know what? This is Intel. They are a large company that could care less about your system, and they're only caring about their profits.
Yep.
And
And well,
I think,
more than anything, they care about their shareholders, because if they don't turn this around, their
well,
shareholders are gonna crucify them.
they sort of also already did that when they said we're not going to do a dividend. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm just saying. I mean, I don't know. I think that's a very, very good question. Um, of what this looks like, and I think uh, I think you're going to see people who are going to lose their jobs. I mean, obviously at Intel, I wonder if you're going to have people who are making these decisions that are really going to that are really going to take it. And I feel bad for that, but at the same time, like, someone up there is saying we're not doing this, or we're going to say this, and we're going to say this. Like, whoever that person is, I sure hope like that you're gonna like that comes to light, because I'd love to see that person just be like, yay, anti-consumer, pro business, do whatever it takes. And you know, I feel bad because I think at the end of the day, it's not good for consumers. So
Yeah. Yeah, no, exactly. And with this Arrow Lake launch, I mean, if Intel does well with it, if they handle it properly, they don't, make any major stumbles like they've made with 13th and 14th gen, I think it's going to turn out to be a big meh. But if they make a mistake, oh, it's going to be bad. And I wouldn't want to be an Intel executive or a shareholder if that happens. So
you
they've
think
got to
about
be
this real quick.
super careful.
Yeah, they have to, but you talk about the stress levels on those teams for Arrow Lake
Yeah.
because you're right, and you have to have those BIOSes dialed in, and you can't have the hint of instability on these because. But with that being said, how many people are going to go buy Arrow Lake? Nobody.
I'm
Um,
not.
I, I mean, I just look at this and be like, okay, is Intel going to be like pushed out of the enthusiast market because of this?
I don't think
Uh,
so. I think what's going to end up happening is they're going to take a hit in the enthusiast market. They're already taking a bath in the server market. And AMD is gobbling that up as quickly as they can. And I think what's going to happen is AMD is going to hit a point where they're saturated, where they can't get enough yield to make more parts. And that's going to be Intel's opportunity to come back and capture the market. Or, and this is something that's not on there, but I did see some videos about NVIDIA potentially releasing a consumer CPU in the next couple of years. This could be the time for NVIDIA to strike with a new
it's
desktop
super
part.
simple. Yeah, super simple. Um, we looked at this earlier. It's like you could sell 8% of your company and buy Intel.
Yep. Well, yeah, but
um,
that's the thing is like they're talking about launching a CPU now. They don't even have to do that. And that's the other thing too is I don't think they would pass regulatory muster trying to buy Intel. It would have to go to somebody else, like potentially, you know, I, what if ARM bought them? You know,
uh,
there's a lot of different players out there that would love to get a hold directly a hold of Intel's IP and be able to profit from that. That
well,
probably would
so
do a better job of running the company.
I mean this all honesty. You talk about regulatory, and I think everyone's like, "Oh no, how could you?" Um, I don't know. Intel's in a really bad spot right now.
Right.
They're on the hook for a fairly large loss, and the fact that you have somebody like Nvidia coming in and saying, "Well, yeah, we're a tech company. We actually know how to do it, so we don't, electrocute our own processors to death." Um,
Yeah.
I wonder if they could say, you know what, do you want to keep Intel in this race? Because the only way to keep Intel in this race is for us to come in and fix this because it is dysfunctional beyond belief.
Yeah.
And if it goes lower than it is right now, that's the way that Nvidia could do this and get a really good bargain.
Yeah, that's a possibility. I don't think it's quite as strong a possibility because regulatory is more concerned about things like patent portfolios. And NVIDIA has a lot of patents that, if you combined them with Intel's patent portfolio, would potentially give NVIDIA an outsized advantage in the market that they potentially could and provably have used to leverage uh, an unfair advantage in a monopolistic fashion, which, I mean, we saw last week the news about the FTC making that call like, yeah, you guys did do this. And so I think that's where they're gonna see a fly in the ointment. But if you talk about somebody like ARM, somebody like an investment firm like BlackRock, or any number of big capital investors that would love to sink their teeth into Intel and potentially pull them out of the fire, there's still a lot of options out there to do it. And Samsung's a potentially good one. TSMC is another good one. I could see TSMC, like I said last week, potentially buying Intel with their several trillion dollars. And I don't see that as being a bad thing in the long run, but in the short run, it's going to suck because right now we really only have one CPU vendor that is trustworthy. And where does that leave
Well,
us
I
in the
mean,
long
it
term?
seems like this is what happens, right? it almost seems like you're going to go from somebody you really like, and there's the people that you don't like. And right now it's it's nobody wants Intel,
Yeah.
and everyone wants AMD. And for the longest time, it's that I think the real question is, and I really believe, and I really question this from Intel's perspective. Um, Intel has not been in this situation for decades
Yeah.
where they're behind. This goes back to the Athlon XP when they were the first to hit 1 gigahertz on a single core processor.
Mm-hmm.
And they beat them by about 3 or 4 months. And since then, it has been Intel pretty much the whole way through as far as performance goes. And they have built their fair share of contracts through laptop manufacturers and desktops, and it's always been AMD on the outside looking in. And now that it's flipped the other way, um, it will be very interesting to see. And I mean this. I don't know if Intel can reorganize quick enough to save themselves. I would not be if you told me today that in 9 months somebody else will own Intel. Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised. Um, and the other thing too is a lot of it is going to hinge on whether Arrow Lake is launched well, or if it turns out to be Intel's bulldozer.
I don't even think it's that. I don't think financial markets are going to sit back and watch.
Mm.
Um, could we possibly see Intel spin off Intel Fab into a separate company? Um, I
Yeah, I
think
could
we
see
very
that
well
happening.
could.
Yeah.
I think we could, um, because it's going to split the liabilities that way. So you've got the design side, and you'll have that, and the two will play very close together. But I don't know. I mean, um, Intel's going to have to do some major reworks, and
Yeah.
unfortunately the problem is I think some of the stuff that we're hearing from behind the scenes, um that canceling different things is going to not be a positive thing, because you're making these decisions off of money.
Yeah. Well, and at the same time, when the market starts seeing you cancel this, cancel this, cancel this, and lay off, a huge 18,000 people from your workforce, that doesn't inspire a whole lot of confidence for your next set of products,
Mm-hmm.
both internally and externally. I mean, whenever Intel started waves of layoffs, even though I was a contractor and typically largely safe, there was always that worry in the back of my mind because, they can always ship that work to a cheaper geo, like their India office or Israel or, uh, the Guadalajara or any
Okay,
number of
so
places.
I meant to ask you this.
Yeah.
Say 12 to 15,000 Intel, so these are fewer blue badges.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously that's what they're talking about. How many fewer contractors do you think? Because Intel has what's called a blue badge, and I think it's a green badge, right?
Well, I don't know if that's changed, but it was green badge when I was there, and I was a green
So,
badge. So
so a green badge is a contractor. A blue badge is a full fledged. I get paid by Intel. Intel pays me. A
yeah.
green badge is somebody who Intel pays a separate company, and they're a third party contractor. How
Yep.
many green badges do you think you could lose?
Uh, well,
Would
that's
you
the
lose
thing
all of them?
is I don't think they'd lose all of them because the green badges do a lot of the grunt work. But I could easily see them cutting the workforce in half. And the good thing for Intel is they don't have to report that because it's not Intel that's getting rid of them. It's, the contracting companies like Kelly Services or Volt or, whoever that is actually doing the layoffs. And because of that, it avoids tripping all of these notification requirements that, both the US and several states have. So, we might see huge swaths of contractors laying off, and nobody's going to cover that because Intel doesn't talk about it. And most of those people are under NDA and can't even talk about, that they're not working at Intel anymore. And so, it really is a messed up situation. So, I mean, to kind of wrap this one up, I really hope that Arrow Lake is launched well. I hope that the changes they're making for 14th gen right now in the BIOS are ones that are going to be hugely beneficial for Arrow Lake's launch, because I don't want to say that we need Intel, but we definitely need more than one trustworthy CPU vendor. And that's kind of where we're at. And, we'll see
just look
what
at what
happens.
happened with Nvidia and Radeon.
Yeah.
Just look at that. And, I think part of the reason why we're spending stupid amounts of money is because there's no competition.
Yeah.
I'm hopeful that AMD can get Radeon sorted off, and that I really think actually the next play for them needs to be performance and value. I think value performance. I don't think you need to go against a 5090, but I think that if AMD can do, I don't know. I mean, if AMD can put together a 4070, 4080 competitor at a very good value proposition with some ray tracing, which I think is what they're focused on, I think you're going to do very well. So, on that note, we will sign off.
All right, everybody. Well, hey, thank you for watching. We appreciate you giving us your time. If you have any questions, comments, great ideas, bad ideas, everything in between, drop it down in the little doobly-doob down below, and let us know what you think. And remember to like and comment and subscribe and all that fun stuff. And until next time, have fun storming the castle.
Take care, guys.